Welcome to the Novice Teacher Series, and this is part 2 of how to make a great lesson plan. So if you remember in part 1, we went over Common Core standards, we went over objectives, activities, and then assessments. And the first 4 are critical in building sort of what we talked about, that block. How do you actually teach? And so what I want to do is give a broader overview and then get into the last 4 elements of a great lesson plan. Every principal you meet, no matter where in your career, if you're a brand new teacher, a novice teacher, or you're a teacher that changed districts, every principal you meet thinks that he or she is a genius. And they all have the greatest lesson plan format that you will ever see. And one of the things that you'll notice if you're within the first 3 years of your career is all the people in the building, all the teachers in the building that have been working for 10 to 20 years, they just go like this. Okay. And the reason is because they've already seen maybe 2 or 3 principals in their career, and they know that there's no such thing as a great lesson plan format. It's not the format that makes a difference. It's the actual lesson plan and then the implementation of the lesson plan, which comes back to one person, the teacher, not the principal, not the supervisor, not the curriculum, not the district, not the superintendent, not the Common Core, not the government, nobody, just you, the teacher. So when anybody tries to tell you that they know how to do your job better, you have to say, okay, and then try to figure out if they have any kernel of information that you can use. You can't just dismiss everybody, and you also can't listen to everything. Nothing works for everyone. When I ran professional development, there were people who tuned in at the beginning and were like, taking feverish notes, and that's what they got out, and the rest of it they tuned out. Then there were people in the middle that when I woke them up, they were like, oh my God, that's great. I'm going to use that in my lesson. And then by the end, some people picked up, they're like, because the discussion started and it engaged them. And so they got what they wanted out of it. You're not going to find a professional development, even by the best people. And I ran 60 to 90 minute professional development sessions with usually a 20-minute Q&A at the end with workshop in the middle, because I always wanted it to be interactive, where you have to actually do something so that you have something to then ask a question about. It's better than sitting there listening to a lecture, which is kind of what this video is. So that's why I try to keep them less than 15 minutes, because let's face it, as a teacher, you know you have the golden 15. If you don't reach your students within 15 minutes, you've lost them. And that's it. There is nothing else you can do. You have lost them. So it doesn't matter if you have a 30-minute period, it doesn't matter if you have a 50-minute period, a 90-minute period. You have 15 minutes of golden teaching time, and that's it. So my mentor always told me, and I didn't follow this in the first video, so I'm going to apologize, but he always told me the best way to teach somebody is first to tell them everything they're going to learn first, then go over each point, and then recap with everything that we just went over. I didn't do that in the first video, so what I'm going to do is first do a recap of the part 1. If you haven't seen the video, you can certainly go back and watch it, but here is just the recap. So 1 was Common Core, 2 was objective, 3 was activities, and 4 was assessments. Okay, so those are the first 4 that we went over in part 1. We're going to jump to part 2. And so what we're going to do is the last 4 elements, which are 5, supplies and materials you're going to need. 6, which is special needs modification, because you are teaching special needs kids in your classrooms. Don't forget that. 7 is going to be the differentiated lesson or differentiated instruction. And then 8 is your classroom climate and your environment, because you have to be concerned about it. All of the things that go on in school, from climate to bullying to social interaction to SEL or social and emotional learning, all comes down to you developing a classroom environment in which students feel no fear to try and fail. The more a student tries, the more they're going to learn. And what's happening now, especially in urban school districts, is the students have no trust or faith in anyone. And so when a teacher gives them an assignment and says, here, do this, their first reaction is, I can't do that. And when the teacher says, but we can try it, and they go, not me, you do it, or throws or rips up the paper or throws something or runs out of the room or creates a diversion or distraction or just gets into trouble, that's because the environment of the classroom is not safe and conducive for student learning, and that's what that means. So that's actually an element in your lesson plan, and you have to teach the students right from day one how to learn in your class. So let's start with number 5. That's supplies and materials. So what are the things that you're going to need? And as you've laid out, obviously, the first 4 and you've done your activities have materials attached to them. And so you want to write them all out. The reason you want to do this is because hopefully you're actually doing lesson plans over the course of a week or at least 2 weeks. I know some more experienced teachers are doing monthly plans, which is great. If you can get to a monthly plan, you're doing a lot better than your other teachers in your building. So you can get all the materials you need because you know the materials you're going to want in your class. So that's an advantage. The second thing is because you can also start to experiment with the materials to see which ones are more effective in the actual lesson. And in your first and second year as a teacher, that's exactly what you should be doing with your notes as a teacher, is give the materials to the students and write down, okay, did the students understand how to use that? Did they like those materials? If they did, I would come up with a star system, like 1 star for good, 2 star or 1 star for bad, and 2 stars for good. You have to come up with some kind of a way to track, do I keep this or do I put this back on the shelf? Because you have to build a lesson repertoire. And so that year 2, you're not building lessons for 42 weeks a year. You're only building maybe 20 lessons. And in year 3, you're building 10 lessons. And in year 4, you're only building 5, but you're tweaking all the other ones. And so that's what really separates a new teacher from an experienced teacher, is they don't have to build everything from scratch. Now, if you could look at a experienced teacher's lesson plans, let's say you're teaching math at some grade level, you're at the 6th grade level, and there's another math teacher that's been teaching for 10 years, if you could see their lesson plans and ask the teacher, don't just look at the lesson plan, ask the teacher, what's your favorite lesson? And if they can say, this is it, look at that plan and see how is it written. And then ask them, why is this your favorite one? How does this lesson plan help you get to that level of enjoyment? And I guarantee the reason the teacher loves the plan is because every time they do it, the kids go like this, oh, I got it. Because isn't that why you became a teacher? Because you want the kids to figure it out in your class. That's the inspiration. That's why you got into this profession. And don't let anyone else try to rip that from you. So critical for us to keep good, experienced, and enthusiastic teachers in the classroom. And forget about what's going on outside your classroom. Forget about the strike. Forget about your medical benefits. Forget about, I know those are problems, but guess what? You can't solve them. Let's get to number 6, because otherwise I'm going to digress. Special needs modification, so important. So in every classroom you have now special needs kids, because that's called inclusion. And you cannot, and I mean this very sincerely, you cannot allow any student or parent know who the special needs kids are. Yes, it's a secret. The only people that are supposed to know are you and the parent of that child. And so, yes, this definitely, your hands are tied behind your back, because you cannot create a group of only special needs kids. You also, if you have an inclusion teacher, cannot just give all the special needs kids to the inclusion teacher. And if your principal's telling you to do that, go talk to your union rep, because that's a violation of IDEA, because it's discriminatory. The special needs children in your classroom are guaranteed a free and public education, just like the non-disabled students in your room. And so by giving them a different teacher, well, let me put it this way. Aren't you the teacher of the room? So when they don't get taught by you, who are they taught by? Every kid deserves to have you as their teacher, so whether they're special needs or not. So the modifications, you need to be careful, okay? So the modifications is not differentiation, and I want to be very clear, because differentiation is going to come next. Modifications means how you modify your lesson for the special needs students to do the work and also to get graded. You can't give them all the same materials and all the same, I guess, expectations, because otherwise then they wouldn't be classified special needs. They need some kind of a modification. Now, some kids are much more mild than others. Some kids have developmental disabilities, which means that you're going to have to modify a lot more. You have some students who just have ADD, which means that all you have to do is just maybe shorten the amount of time that they do it in, because if you want them to do something for 15 minutes, you better be prepared to run around the room, because after 5, they're going to be running around the room, because they can't sit for longer than 5 minutes. Now, that's not because the kid is a bad kid. He can't physically sit. That's his special need. And you have to love that about kids. So modifications is how you adjust and modify your lesson so that the student with the special need can be just as successful as a student who doesn't have a special need. It doesn't mean you dumb it down. It doesn't mean you water it down. It just means you modify it. This brings us to number 7, which is lesson differentiation. Okay, this is the biggest confusion that I see with novice teachers and with teachers in general. And maybe it's just a East Coast thing. I don't know. If you're watching from the West Coast, please make a comment right down below the video and let me know if this happens in your building. So modifications is how you modify your lesson. Differentiation is how you actually teach the lesson. And so what I always tried to do when I was teaching my teachers is, the easiest way to think about it is differentiation is how people learn. Okay? We used 3 differentiators: audio learning, visual learning, and kinesthetic learning. But I've seen studies where there's 21 different learning styles. Now, you could go crazy and try to address all 21, I guess, but I like to keep things simple, and so I wanted my teachers to keep things simple in their classrooms, so we just focused on those 3: audio learning, visual learning, and kinesthetic learning. I guess here I can do a little teaser, because I'm going to do an entire video on differentiated instruction where I actually go into how you can differentiate lessons, especially with special needs students in the room, because differentiated instruction is critical to student learning. It's not an, oh, I'll just try it. If you don't differentiate for at least those three learning styles, you're not reaching every kid. And that's why students fail in classes. So if you're a teacher who likes to talk a lot at the front of the room, you're missing the boat. So that's audio learning. So only the kids that can listen and learn are getting the information. All the kids that need something in their hands are not understanding what you're saying, and all the kids that need visuals are not getting what you're saying. Now, what's the most important thing about a lesson? And this is where teachers get screwed up. The only thing you need to differentiate is not the entire lesson. It's not all the activities. The only thing you need to differentiate is the instructions to the activity, to the objective, to your lesson plan. How you tell kids what to do is exactly how you get there. Lesson differentiation. So first there's audio, and as you can see, I am talking to you. So you have to pay attention to everything that you hear. Now, it's a video, so you're watching me, but that's not enough. That's why I put up the graphics. So I'm going to have everything that I say run down this screen. That's visual learning. Now, kinesthetic learning is I want you to do this. I want you to write down what I say. And that is what is kinesthetic. Kinesthetic. Kinesthetic learning. End of lesson. So now you have gotten all three differentiators: audio, visual, kinesthetic. And if you can do that in your instructions, so when you're getting that golden 15 and you're up at the front of the room, you need to make sure that the students have something to write. Yes. So if you're building out your lesson, one of the activities should be note taking. And if you want to do a graphic organizer, especially if you're in elementary school and you want to lay it out that, okay, kids, so this is on, seeing the number 1? Okay, at number 1, I want you to write this down, and have them write it down, because you're teaching them. And as they get older, you can get a little bit more complex. And if every school district did this from K to 12, by the time students got to high school, they would have much better study skills, they'd have much better attention skills, and they would be much better students. The problem comes that nobody does this. Nobody. The principal at the elementary school doesn't talk to the principal at the middle school, and the principal at the middle school definitely doesn't talk to the principal at the high school, because they are jealous of the high school principal because they think they could be the high school principal. It's all about human ego. Principals are the worst because it's all about them. It's never about the students. It's my building. Yeah, okay, great. It's the students' building. You're there to guide them. And in fact, the principal's job is to support the teacher's teaching, not to support the teacher. And teachers get that wrong. It is not the principal's job to make you feel good. It is the principal's job to make sure that you teach well. And so they're supposed to spend all day on figuring out, if you have a problem in your classroom, why is there a problem in your classroom? If you need more training and coaching, that you get more training and coaching. If you don't need more training and coaching, to leave you alone. There was one thing in my building that I was so frustrated with, is that my veteran staff, I would leave alone and they would come to me and say, how come you don't talk to me? And I'm like, you don't need talking to. Just go do what you do. You should be happy that I don't bother you. You're my best teacher in the building. What else do you want? I go, do you think it changes from day 1 to day 20? You were the best teacher in the building on day 1 and you're no longer the best teacher on day 20? If I change my attitude and I change what I do, then yeah, then maybe you need to question it. But if I'm consistent, you need to be consistent. You're already the best teacher in my building. Just keep doing that. And I will give you any suggestions if I see the need to. But you need to stop worrying. And that's the biggest issue right now with teachers in education is you guys worry every minute of every day. Just love your job. You have the most noble job on the planet. Without teachers, there is no one. What should matter to a teacher is whether the students in their class are learning. And that is it. That's the bottom line. If your kids are not learning, or if there's one student that's falling behind, that's what you need to worry about. Why is that kid falling behind? Because there's a reason for it. Now, hopefully, if you leave comments, please, if you have students that are struggling in your class, put it down in the comments. I will make videos on everything that's going on. I've done this for 20 years. I worked with the most challenging students in my state. Hands down, whatever you think you're dealing with, I dealt with way more challenging. I can work on anything that you guys are dealing with, but put it down in the comments. Please hit the like button and subscribe. There's going to be a whole bunch of videos coming out. I'm making playlists for all of them, and I hope that you appreciate this, and I wish you a bunch of good luck and back to school 2019.